Hello, Jacksonites. This is going to be my first break from Superhero Binge. It's going to last a couple of videos. I did 9 episodes in a row of Superhero Binge. I figure that's a good start. And I also think I'm halfway through the DC stuff that I have, so I think there's another happy coincidence. So, you read the title right. Today, I will be discussing a completely unrelated movie to superheroes, that's for damn sure. And it is one that I now have a newfound respect for. And if I was to make a top 150 favorite films list, this would be in the top 30. Today, I will be discussing the 2018 giant monster, giant monster killer shark movie, The Meg, starring Jason Statham and directed by John Turteltaub. I think that's how you pronounce it. So, The Meg is an interesting film. It's based on a book simply called The Meg, hang on. Based on the 1997 book Meg, a novel of deep terror, which I have read a little bit of. It's pretty good stuff. It feels very original, and it's very, very, very enjoyable. And Disney originally purchased the film rights to make a Meg movie in the 1990s, but after several years in development hell, the rights for the Meg eventually landed at Warner Brothers Studios. Warner Brothers, you're on a fucking roll, you know that? The film was greenlit in 2015, and Turteltaub and much of the cast joined by September 2016. And the making of this movie began the following month in New Zealand and ended in Sanya, China in January 2017. The movie had a budget of $130 to $178 million, and its box office run was $527 million. So I'd be pretty safe to say that it's a good success. It's a moderate success. I'm so glad that there is a sequel being made because, this is only the adaptation of one of the books. Meg was followed by 7 sequels. So since this movie was a pretty decent success, if they can get all 8 of the books adapted, Warner Brothers have a pretty decent franchise on their hands. Because not only do the Meg books deal with megalodons, they also deal with other various giant sea creatures. So I guess you could kind of say these are like a big budget version of those Asylum, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus type movies. So the only difference is there's some actual talent put into this movie and not the Asylum movies. So the plot to The Meg is loosely based on the plot of the first book, but it does follow the same general storyline of the book. It has very similar characters, and the overall tone of the Meg movie is pretty similar to the first Meg book. So I would even though it's still loosely based on the book, I'd say it's based on it enough to know exactly what you're dealing with and know exactly what to expect. So the plot of The Meg begins when a rescue team led by Jonas Taylor, played by the kick-ass, badass motherfucker that is Jason Statham, is saving a group of sailors that are trapped inside a nuclear submarine that has sunk to the bottom of the ocean. When Jonas sees the hull of the submarine being caved in by some unknown creature. 2 rescuers are stuck in the damaged sub and say their return to the rescue submersible will take a few minutes. However, Taylor ends up leaving them behind because he is afraid they will all die if they wait. As they leave, the damaged sub explodes, and Taylor's claim that a giant sea creature caused the disaster is dismissed by his fellow teammate Dr. Heller, who believes Taylor was affected with pressure-induced psychosis and blames Jonas for the loss of their friends, like an asshole. 5 years later, billionaire Jack Morris meets Dr. Minwei Zhang. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not that great with Chinese names. At the underwater research facility called Mana One, which Morris finances. Zhang and his daughter Suyin, an oceanographer, are supervising a mission to explore what may be a deeper section of the Mariana Trench. For those of you who don't know, the Mariana Trench is the deepest natural point in the world. Is a crescent-shaped trench in the Earth's crust, located in the Western Pacific Ocean, 200 kilometers off the Mariana Islands, and it's about 202,550 kilometers long, 69 kilometers wide, and the maximum known depth is 10,994 meters, or 36,070 feet. At the southern end of a small slot-shaped valley in its floor known as the Challenger Deep. However, some unrepeated measurements place the deepest portion at 11,034 meters. For comparison, if Mount Everest were dropped into the trench at this point, its peak would still be 2 kilometers underwater. So, yeah, deep place. And who knows what the fuck is down there. This is not an exaggeration. We've explored space more than our own oceans. The oceans cover 2/3 of the entire planet. We've only explored 5 to 10% of our oceans. So this deeper section of the Mariana Trench is concealed by a thermocline cloud, which is a thin but distinct layer in a large body of fluid in which temperature changes more rapidly with depth than it does in the layers above or below. Of hydrogen sulfide. The mission is being conducted by Lori, who is Taylor's ex-wife, Toshi, and The Wall. Yeah, the guy's name is actually The Wall in the movie, in a submersible. The mission appears to be going well until a very large creature hits the submersible, which causes it to lose contact with Mana One. James McCreadis, another crew member at the station who played the stepfather character in Fear the Walking Dead, suggests sending Taylor down to attempt a rescue, citing the similarity to his story 5 years prior. And despite Heller's objections, Zhang and Mac decide to travel to Thailand to recruit Taylor anyway, and Suyin attempts the rescue herself. However, a colossal squid intervenes and attacks her craft. Before it can destroy her craft, however, a massive shark appears and kills it, about 20 meters in length. Agreeing to help, Taylor reaches the trapped submersible and saves Lori and The Wall. However, when the shark returns, Toshi sacrifices himself by opening the hatch door and detaching the rescue vessel, allowing Taylor, Lori, and The Wall to escape safely, while he diverts the shark's attention to his sub, which causes it to be driven into a thermal vent, causing a massive explosion. Back at Mana One, the crew discovers that the shark is, of course, a megalodon, the largest shark ever known, believed to be extinct for millions of years. Megalodon, of course, meaning big tooth, is an extinct species of shark that lived approximately 23 to 2.6 million years ago during the early Miocene to the end of the Pliocene period. It's essentially a super giant version of the great white shark, and though it may have looked similar to the basking shark or the sand tiger shark, some people do believe it to be. It's regarded as one of the largest and most powerful predators to have ever lived. Fossil remains suggest that this shark could have reached a maximum length of 18 meters or 59 feet, with the average size being around 10.5 meters or 34 feet. Their powerful jaws can exert a bite force of up to 110,000 to 180,000 newtons, or 24,000 to 41,000 pounds per square inch. Their teeth were thick and robust, built for grabbing prey and breaking bone, the largest of which being around 9 inches in length. They have the edges of a stainless steel steak knife. And their primary source of prey was whales, typically baleen whales. Meanwhile, Suyin's daughter, who's named Mei Ying, goes to the large glass leading to a beautiful underwater view of the ocean and sees the megalodon through the looking glass and is completely petrified. When Suyin comes down with Jonas, they see a whale being eaten alive by the massive shark. The crew then realize that it has escaped from the depths of the trench by swimming through a hole in the thermocline that was created by the thermal vent explosion, briefly raising the temperature enough for it to safely pass without freezing to death. Because below that thermocline, it is negative, or right above that thermocline, it is negative 3 degrees Celsius. That deep underwater is damn fucking cold. The group decide to track and poison the megalodon, which they do succeed in doing. And while injecting the megalodon with atorphine, which is a semi-synthetic opioid possessing an analgesic potency approximately 100,000 to 300,000 times that of morphine. So it's super morphine, essentially. 10 cc's is enough to knock out an orca whale. 20 cc's is enough to kill it. And one bottle about this big and about that big around is apparently enough to kill a 60-foot-long megalodon. Suyin's oxygen mask gets compromised in the process when she is in a super plexiglass bulletproof shark tank that the megalodon is trying to swallow. Taylor revives her with CPR when she is retrieved back to the surface. And in the process of being rescued, the megalodon does end up dying and is lassoed by the ship and is pulled on board. And despite this success, Taylor comments that the teeth don't match up with the previous attack. Let's see. Shortly after, a second, larger megalodon emerges from the water, devours the wall and the smaller megalodon, this presumably being a female. This was a plot twist that occurred in the book, though it was much earlier in the book. The first male megalodon was killed, and I think it was disemboweled. But the warm blood that oozed out of the male megalodon was warm enough in order to protect the female megalodon from the cold, and she was able to swim to the surface. The female megalodon does end up capsizing the boat. It also devours Dr. Heller, who saves Jax's life by luring it to himself, Jax being a technician of Mana 1. The surviving crew returns to Mana 1 in 2 dinghies, but Dr. Zhang succumbs to an injury that he sustained and dies of his wounds. Morris announces that he has informed local governments, naval forces, but it is out of their hands at this point. At nightfall, Morris attempts to destroy the megalodon himself by ordering a helicopter crew to drop modified depth charges at it, citing that the creature's actions could result in hundreds of lawsuits. Fucking asshole. He approaches the carcass of the supposed megalodon in a boat, but they discover that it's just a whale. When the megalodon approaches, the boat accelerates, which causes Morris to fall overboard, and he proceeds to be eaten by the megalodon. Taylor and the remaining Mana 1 crew discovers Morris's deception, finding out that he actually did not alert local governments of the megalodon. And they resolve to track and kill the shark themselves, only to realize that it is en route to a crowded beach on the Sanya Bay in China. The megalodon kills several beachgoers before the Mana 1 crew plays audio of a humpback whale call to divert the shark's attention towards them. Taylor and Suyin attempt to destroy the megalodon with rigged torpedoes. However, they are able to hurt it, but they are not able to kill it. Taylor's submersible is severely damaged, and Taylor manages to cut the megalodon with parts of his ship and stab it in the eye with a harpoon. Due to the massive presence of blood, multiple sharks in the area notice this and they start to devour the megalodon, killing it. It's actually quite gruesome because the way that the shark is cut, Taylor's submersible has a sharp piece of metal jutting out it like an arm, or not really arm blade, but it's like a side-facing blade on one of it. And he swims towards the shark, but then he goes down and he turns, and the shark is cut, almost disemboweled down its stomach. And then the megalodon grabs a hold of his submersible. He exits the submersible when he activates an air blast that's gets the shark's mouth off him, takes the harpoon, swims up to the megalodon, stabs it in the eye, but in pain, when it breaches, he's able to use the momentum of gravity to drive the harpoon completely into the megalodon's eye. And then, of course, the massive wound on the shark's chest leaks out a shit ton of blood. And, of course, this attracts all the sharks. They end up disemboweling and devouring the megalodon, actually to the point where one of the sharks is able to eat its way into the megalodon's stomach and come out the megalodon's mouth. During this fight, Suyin was able to evacuate everyone to a boat where a Chinese couple is getting married. Taylor gets onto the boat, and he and Suyin consider taking a vacation to celebrate their triumph, thus ending the movie, ironically, with the French word for finish being fin, leading into the sequel, hopefully, that will come within the next couple of years. So how about this plot? I actually really like this movie's plot. I think it's pretty original. Oh, I didn't see any of your guys' comments. Red Ranger Key 501st. This is the reason why I don't go to the ocean. Yeah, I don't blame you there. Still like all the Jaws movies. Everyone has an ex-wife. Good guy shark save girl from giant hentai. Have you seen the Mega Shark movie series? No, I have not. I've seen like clips and trailers of them over the years. I don't really have any desire to see those. They look kind of stupid. But I wouldn't mind seeing Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark. So anyway, this plot, I really like this plot. I think this movie has a really good plot. It's not too complicated, but it's not too simple either. It feels like a classic Universal action adventure movie it does feel like Jaws a little bit, but not to the point where it feels like a ripoff. It feels like a bigger budget and, in my opinion, better version of Jaws. And yeah, I said it. I think The Meg is better than Jaws. I'll save that for later. So yeah, I really like this movie's plot. It draws enough inspiration from the book, in my opinion, that if you were to read the book and then watch the movie, you would be content with how similar the book and the movie are. The Wikipedia page says it's loosely based on the book. And while a lot of things are pretty different, I still do think that this is a pretty solid adaptation of that book. Again, I haven't read the whole thing, but from what I have read of the book, this is a pretty solid adaptation, at least in my opinion. So I think the author, Steve Alten, would be pretty proud of. I mean, I'm sure he has seen the movie so far, but or to this point, but still, I think Steve Alten would have been pretty proud. So let's get into the pros and cons of The Meg. Pro number one is that this movie has beautiful cinematography, absolutely beautiful cinematography. For a movie that had a budget of 120 to 178 million dollars, I think it was 120. Hang on. No, 130 to 178 million dollars. This movie looks like the money was very well spent in its cinematography. There's a lot of wide, sweeping shots of the ocean the oceanscape. I guess you could call it that. The bottom of the sea floor is brilliantly shot. All the camera shots underwater, so you can see the shark moving around. Those all look great. Whoever was the cinematographer, let's see, who's the cinematographer? Tom Stern, you did a very, 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 very good job with this movie cinematography. Props to you. Pro number 2 is that I think this movie is paced perfectly. No scene drags. No scene feels forced. No scene feels uninteresting. Every single scene in this movie feels like it's there for a reason, and it builds this movie's world, and it builds this movie's story. And I think this movie is paced perfectly. I was never bored. Never, ever, ever, ever bored. This movie has very cinematic pacing. No scene drags. No scene feels forced. I think that I can't say enough good things about this movie's pacing. It moves along at a very natural progression. Pro number 3. This movie has pretty good humor. It's a giant killer shark movie. I think at this point, I mean, with all the abundance of these really shitty killer shark movies out here, like Swamp Shark, Hammerhead, the Mega Shark series, I think there's like 6 of them now. The Sharktopus movie. There's tons of killer shark movies out here. So I feel like if you don't have a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor, you're kind of missing something. So the Meg does have a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor. One of my favorite lines, and this is one of the things that I feel Jason Statham gives a pretty good performance. I'll talk about him in just a minute, but there's one scene where Taylor's character, he puts on a wetsuit and then he jumps into the water in order to put a tracker on the. Actually, the build up to that scene is pretty funny too. When they reach the surface and when the Megalodon reaches the surface, it destroys 3 boats, and they're trying to figure out a way. Well, how the hell can we find this thing? So then the billionaire guy who owns Mono One says, "Just put a tracker on it." And they look at him and say, "What?" Yeah, just grab one of those like shark fin trackers and then put it on its dorsal fin. Don't you guys watch Shark Week? And then that leads to everyone just says, "I'm not getting in the water." Then they all turn and look at Taylor, and Taylor just gets this look on his face like, "Come on, really?" So he puts on a wetsuit. He gets a harpoon gun that has a transmitter on it. And then he attaches a cable to himself, and he jumps out into the ocean, starts swimming. And a little ways out, he says to himself, "This is nuts. I am approaching the killer shark. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming." So, I mean, none of this movie's humor is going to be side-splittingly funny, but you'll get a few good snickers out of it here and there, and you'll get some smiles on your face. This movie does have a good sense of humor to it, and I think that's one of the best things about this movie. So, yeah. Pro number 4 is this movie's music. It's kind of generic, I will admit, but still, Deep Blue Sea is a good one too. It's kind of generic, but I still do feel like this movie has a pretty good music score. See who did the music. Harry Gregson Williams, noted for video games, TV, and films such as the Metal Gear Solid series, Chronicles of Narnia, X-Men Origins. So he's good for action movies, and this definitely is an action movie. So it feels like... Sorry, I thought something was falling over here. It feels like action movie music, and I think it's just fine for that. Is it generic? Yes. Is it going to win an Oscar for best musical score? No. But for what it is, it's fitting for the scenes. It makes the action scenes feel more exciting, and it fits the tone of this movie. Yeah, I like the music score. Pro number 5 is that this movie is very colorful. Specifically, like there's a lot of greenish blues with this movie, and I like that because I feel like that's a more natural color for the color of the ocean, at least off the coast of China, that especially. Even though this movie was filmed in New Zealand, but some of it was filmed in China. I like the color of the ocean. It's a bluish greenish color. And that makes the color of the shark stick out a lot more. It's not the stereotypical, like for Megalodon, they often use the They often use a great white shark's color scheme, blue stomach, uh, dark blackish blue color on the top. Here, the sharks are kind of a more brownish, almost greenish color in some spots. And I like that they also, well, I'll talk about that in just a minute, but so I like the color for the megalodons. And all the colors that they use when they go below the bottom of the Mariana Trench through that thermocline cloud. There's a lot of natural sea life down there, like that have photosynthesis, and they use like artificial, or not artificial, but natural light within themselves. Like a lot of jellyfish have that. A lot of deep sea marine fish have that, where it's bioluminescence. That's what it's called. There's a lot of bioluminescent light under there. That's always been really pretty. It's been a lot of neon colors. Like there's a lot of blues, reds, and yellows and greens down there. It's very pretty to look at. Kind of reminds me of Avatar a little bit. And I really like the color scheme of this movie too. It's very, very, very pleasant to look at, in my opinion. Pro number 6 is that there's some good scares in this movie. Obviously, like one of my favorite scare scenes is, I can give you 2 off the top of my head. The first one is when Su Yin is in the bulletproof shark cage, as I'll call it. And she's looking around, she's looking for the shark, and she can't find it. And then she looks down, and then she sees the shark coming up and bites a hold of the shark cage and starts terrassing it out into the ocean. That scene did make me jump. But the ultimate scene that freaked the shit out of me, actually, there's 2 more I can give you off the top of my head. One was the one that happened after the one that scared me the most. But the second one was when a juvenile humpback whale was bumping against the underwater window that looked out into the ocean. It looked like it was trying to warn the people inside Mana 1, but then out of nowhere, the megalodon showed up and bit the fucker clean in half, and all you see was its part of its tail just kind of float in the water for a sec, then start to sink. I did not expect the whale to have such a gruesome death, so that kind of knocked me off my feet. But the ultimate scare moment for me was Mei Ying was playing around with some kind of remote control ball thing, was going throughout Mana 1's underwater parts to look out into the ocean. Her little ball gets stuck on, I think it's like a coat on the floor. So she goes to pick up the floor, and there's a big wide shot of the ocean behind her. And then from the gloom, you can see the shark approach slowly the window, and it stares down Mei Ying. Mei Ying turns around, and she sees the shark. She's like the description said, she's absolutely petrified at the sight of it. And then she drops her ball, and then the shark bites down on the glass, and its bite was so strong. Now I'm guessing this was probably got to be super industrial strength plexiglass that has to resist the strongest of water pressure. This is about 150 feet below the surface of the ocean. So while water pressure isn't too intense down there, it is still pretty strong. It cracks under the weight of the shark's bite. And there's lots of indentations of the shark's teeth in the glass. Can't deny anybody at some point, if you were not in that position, if you work with the ocean, at some point, if you're not afraid of sharks, you're an idiot. And if you weren't in that situation and you were to look and you saw a 60-foot super predator, being the megalodon, swimming towards you and then just staring you down, you would not shit your pants. Me personally, I'd have a fucking heart attack. So this movie scared me in a way that Jaws never did. Jaws made me afraid to go to the ocean. I'm more afraid of a 60 to 75 foot long giant shark than of a 25 foot long average sized great white. That's just me. You can somewhat fight a great white with, just having a machete or a decent sized knife in your hand. How the hell do you fight a 75-foot long super shark with just a knife? I'll tell you, you just don't. So yeah, if you weren't in that position, you didn't shit your pants, you'd be an idiot. So yeah, this movie has pretty good scares. Pro number 7 is this movie's action scenes are pretty damn entertaining too. They're not like, they're technically action scenes because action-y stuff happens, but they're more like rescue action scenes, and those are pretty entertaining too, though there are actual action scenes where they're fighting something. Of course, the final battle with Taylor trying to kill the female Megalodon, that's a pretty entertaining scene. It's a big chase, but it's really entertaining to watch. All the rescue action scenes are also pretty entertaining too. Like seeing Taylor, it's almost like muscle memory, saving people underwater. This guy is such a pro at what he does, and it's very engaging. It's very entertaining to watch. Probably my favorite action scenes are when they're fighting the male Megalodon. When Taylor is out and he shoots the harpoon with the transmitter to the male Megalodon, and then the male sees him and starts to swim for him. Taylor starts to swim back to the boat, and then they because it's attached to a cable, they attach it to a motor which starts to pull him in. Watching Taylor get chased by this male Megalodon, he has to kind of move and duck and swim out of the way. And right at the last minute, when the shark is about to lunge at him, he himself has to lunge out of the water and let the cable just bring him the rest of the way to the boat. All the action scenes in this movie, I think, are absolutely spectacular. And this leads me into pro number 8, is the characters. I think this movie has a very, very fantastic, magnificent cast. Li Bingbing as Suyin Zhang, who is the main love interest for Jason Statham's character in this movie. At first, she's a little unlikable because she kind of feels like she's a bit bitchy, and she's like she blames Taylor for all the shit that happened with when she loses Toshi, and when she just kind of seems like an extension of her father. Which I'll talk about him in just a minute. But once she realizes that Taylor actually did save a whole bunch of people, she apologizes for her ways, and she and Taylor, they gradually grow closer over the course of the film. And they actually do have pretty good chemistry for each other. It helps that some of their dialogue is sprinkled with some humor. And so that I think that makes the chemistry a lot better in the process. Winston Chow as Dr. Minwei Zhang, who is Suyin's father, of course. He's a very likable character, even though he's kind of the stereotypical strict Chinese father who is all business and no pleasure. In the end, when he passes away, he apologizes to Suyin, saying, "I was too hard on you, and I failed to realize that you're the greatest thing that I ever created, and I hope that my granddaughter grows up to become just like you." And that's a very nice scene. It's not an overly dramatic death scene, which I'm so glad. It's kind of like the Amazing Spider-Man when talking about superhero movies again. When Captain Stacy dies, his death scene is not very it is dramatic, but it's not overly dramatic. So I definitely feel like it's in that vein of being a good death scene. So he does a really good job. Sophia Kai as Meiying Zhang. I was a little concerned about seeing a kid character who I thought would be annoying. She's actually not. She probably is the funniest character in this movie. She refers to Taylor as crazy. And there's lots of scenes where she has really good chemistry with Taylor. where she kind of feels like she's ahead of her age. She's only 8 years old, but she kind of talks like she's a 14-year-old. And a lot of her dialogue is pretty funny. Like there's a scene where she's playing cards with Taylor's ex-wife because she got injured in the rescue. She was impaled with a hex wrench, and they were playing cards together. And she said, and Mei Ying ended up beating her in the game of cards. And she says, "You owe me a soda for that." Then Mei Ying just goes, "Fine." Hops down from the bed. "Fine, fine, 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 fine." I found that to be very, 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 very amusing. So sue me. And when she came back, she said, "That's probably a good idea." And she has like 3 sodas in her arms, and she joins the conversation between Taylor and his ex-wife. So yeah, Sophia Kai as Mei Ying. She does a very good job. The rest of the human cast does a pretty good job too. Though the best performance, hands down, in this movie is Jason Statham as Jonas Taylor. Jason Statham, he's not quite one of my favorite actors. He's one of my favorite martial artists. That's for damn sure. Being trained, I've talked about him before. Being trained in kickboxing, Muay Thai, Wing Chun, karate, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as well as probably some skills in wushu as well. But Jason Statham is acting his ass off in this movie. But because his dialogue is sprinkled with a little bit of humor, he still brings that badass Jason Statham persona, which is kind of a hybrid of both his Expendables personality and his Transporter personality. Though here I still feel like it's more of his own original thing. And his performance in this film, I think, is fan-fucking-tastic. I'm not sure if I'll call it his best performance because he was pretty good in the Transporter series. And from what I've seen of the Expendables movies, he looks pretty good in there. So Jason Statham gives a fantastic performance in this film. And his character, I think, is probably the best in the entire movie. You watch this movie, aside from the Megalodon itself, you watch this movie for Jason Statham. And speak of the devil, pro number 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 is the Meg itself. The Meg themselves. The male Megalodon certainly has a very good sense of threat to it. It's a very nasty, nasty, nasty creature. I like the design that they use too. I almost talked about this earlier. It actually was mentioned in the Wikipedia article for the Megalodon. Some scientists believe that it was more like a basking shark, which is the second largest species of shark on the planet. I definitely still do see the influences of it being a super great white shark, but there also is traits of it that make it look similar to a basking shark. Primarily its color, it being a brown, almost kind of greenish brown color. That's how basking sharks are colored, a very deep, either a shit brown or a greenish brown color. And they also have super giant gills that kind of flop around all over the place. Basking sharks have that too. So I like the design for the Megs in this movie. It's a mix of a great white shark and a basking shark. Primarily, it's a great white, but you still do see the basking shark design motifs. Not to mention these sharks look pretty old, so they're kind of ragtag in appearance. So it has some touches of both Greenland sharks and Pacific sleeper sharks. So I like the myriad of design of various sharks that they used to design these 2 megalodons. The male has the most screen time, I don't know. They've been pretty equal amounts of screen time, but the male is the first one that we see. And he's pretty threatening, but ultimately he seems like he's manageable. The female is the one that's the true pain in the ass. The male is about 60 feet in length, and it's the female is the one that is the true giant, being 23 meters in length or 75 feet. That is a giant super shark. So I like the design for her. It ultimately is pretty similar to the male's design. I think it has a deeper shade of greenish brown for its color. And it has even more basking shark-esque gills, but it has a more great white-esque looking mouth. I'm pretty sure that's a female right there. So I do like the myriad, once again, of different designs for sharks that they use for the Megs. Overall, and also their sense of threat, they're total complete badasses. They're nasty giant monsters. So the Megs are absolutely awesome in this movie, and they make for great antagonists. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this leads me into pro number 11. There's 11 pros. I think that's the most amount of pros I've ever had for a movie. Is the special effects in this movie are absolutely fantastic. Would you swim with a whale shark? I don't really know if I'd swim with a whale shark. I don't like to swim in water that's that deep, since they're usually deep sea dwellers. But I mean, if I had a knife the size of a machete on me, just in case, and if it was like a juvenile whale shark, maybe I'd swim with it. If it was in relatively shallow water, maybe strong, maybe I'd swim with it. But I don't know. Anyway, the special effects in this movie are absolutely fantastic. There is a lot of CG used, and there is a lot of blue screen, there is a lot of green screen, but there is also some practical stuff as well. The whale carcass that they use in the middle of the movie, I'm pretty sure, is a hybrid of practical and digital effects. The prop itself was practical, of course, because you had to have the actors actually climb onto it, but it was enhanced with digital effects to make the guts look nastier and look more decomposed, and the skin to make it look more decomposed. Similar thing that they did in the movie The Shallows, since that movie also has a whale carcass in it. So that looks pretty good. And the CGI models that they use for the two Megs look pretty damn good. They're very well detailed. Like I said, these sharks look pretty old. So I like the attention to detail that they put into these sharks to make them look older. Their skin's more ragged. There's a lot of bites and scratches into their skin. And the male shark's dorsal fin has some cuts and it's flaking around in some spots. So that looks good. Their teeth and their mouths are well detailed. The CG models used for the rest of the sea creatures looks pretty good. The green screen looks very good. The CG models look very good. The blue screen looks great. The colors are amazing, like I said earlier. The set design for the Mana 1 and the various submarines and submersible vehicles are very good. They're very inventive. They definitely do feel very original. The digital work that they use for the inside of these submersibles looks really good, looks really high tech. The production values are great. Overall, these special effects are absolutely fan-fucking-tastic. For a big budget killer shark movie, you could not ask for better special effects. In my opinion, that is. So with all these good things to say about the Meg, do I have any cons with the film? No, I don't. I ain't got nothing. So I'm actually going to wrap it up here. I had a lot to say about this movie, but I said it pretty quickly. But still, it's a fairly long review. Anyway, big shark, big action, big fun, says Tara Hitchcock from CBS TV. And yes, I do agree. The Meg is a masterpiece, in my opinion. It's a lot of fun. And if you want a killer shark movie that's not Jaws or Deep Blue Sea to watch, that's actually really good, give this a watch. Give it a fucking watch. You will not be disappointed. So, in my opinion, this is better than Jaws. I am not kidding. I enjoyed this movie 10 times more than Jaws. And in my opinion, no pun intended as well, the Meg blows Jaws completely out of the water and blows it up with that gas tank 10 times over and over and over again. Which is why I will be giving the Meg a perfect solid gold 10 out of 10. Check it out, buy it, love it. Bring on the rest of the 7 sequels, please. And that'll do it for the first of my break videos from Superhero Binge. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this video with your friends. And as always, go out and kill yourself a giant shark and add that to your list of accomplishments in your life. You'll feel pretty good about yourself. And I will see you guys also be as much of a badass as Jason Statham in the next video.